I belong to a generation that does not believe in the state. So we grew up, in the 80s where everything was failing. We just never occurred to us to ever work for government, at least not to me. It won't even happen. I mean, I can't even remember government hiring anybody while I was going through high school. So when I finished high school, living was, like many of us, we had to leave. Then I got the opportunity to go to Morocco. How that happened is also a whole story, but I ended up in Morocco, age 18, to study math and physics and to prepare for what they call grandes écoles d'ingénieurs. So to get into engineering school, you have to do math and physics for 2 years, and you take this competitive exam, and depending on your ranking, you end up in the school, depending on kind of supply and demand. I got a scholarship to do this in Morocco, in Tanger. Already back then, there were people trying to cross because it's 14 kilometers to the first city in Spain, and every time we go out, we have to explain to people. I was with another friend of mine from Benin and 3 other Senegalese, and we have to explain that we're not here to cross, we're just here to study. Anyway, I spent 1 year there, and I think that was probably my first encounter with hardship and just, leave. Before me, I have an elder brother, but he left to go to university in the city next door. He could come back every weekend. I left for good. I remember, my father, the day I was leaving, my father gave me 10,000 CFA. It's about, I don't know, 15 euros, $20, and tell me not to look back. That's it. I must just go, right? And I remember that the first phone call I have to make back home, it was, I had to get the coins. I have to find those machines.
Payphones, yes.
I have to call the neighbor, tell the neighbor to go and tell my parents that, that to come and wait, and then, then eventually. And so started my journey of migrant, if you want. So eventually I moved. I spent another year in Morocco. I moved to Casablanca for my second year. I was kind of the student who could not only try to get into the engineering school in Morocco, but also in France. And then I took both exams, and I got into telecom engineering school in France. And then I left, and then I went to France. And then that was kind of episode 2 of me being a migrant. Things are a little bit easier, but still quite complicated. We had to write letters. I don't know if you remember. Absolutely, postcard. You have to, the stamp and all that. But I went. I went to engineering. I did my engineering school. I didn't realize then that I was going right into the elite of the French, kind of knowledge, I would say. And the good thing about those schools is you kind of set. I mean, it's very small groups, and so I ended up there. And again, I always daring. I never thought that I don't belong. This is too good. I just went on with the program, and this is late 90s, and if you could spell internet, you were in hot demand, as you can imagine. And here I am in telecom engineering. So my internship, which you have to do to graduate, to get the master degree, at least 6 months, I chose to do it with a startup in New York. And I went to the US, and there was an adventure. I wanted to learn. And so July 98, I arrived in New York first time and had my real first startup experience. Almost stayed because it was the .com. Everything was fantastic. We were just having so much fun. But I had a girlfriend back in France that I was absolutely convinced I was going to marry. So I went back to France and finished my degree, and then started working for PricewaterhouseCoopers. And my sister went to Canada, my brother went to the US. Things were getting a little bit easier. We had those calling cards. You have to the scratch out, you have to dial, and so we could talk for longer, and you don't have to go to the phone shop anymore. You could do it for, so, blah, blah, blah. And being in the telecom school, I had easy access to internet and my brother in the US. So I started communicating like that. But what didn't change along all those time is how to send money. And especially, so when I was in Morocco, I was still kind of really a poor student. So my parents had to send me money, and Western Union or MoneyGram and so on. And by the time I started working back in France, I have to send money. And, I send money back. And all along for me, it was just that's the one thing that was not getting better. And I remember the first time Western Union Digital came. And I was in the US at that time, and, I tried to sign up to send money online, because I was writing the .com. I couldn't even get past the registration. It never worked. So anyway, keep that in mind. I spent about 5 years with PricewaterhouseCoopers, and then I went to, I started, wondering more and more about coming back to Africa, because I always had in me, I had that sense that I wanted to do something useful. I couldn't put a name on it, but I felt like, doing slides and helping, France Telecom optimizing the revenue from doctors in the 15 arrondissement of Paris. It was not particularly interesting, but I could do it because it's just analytical, it's, problem solving and so on. But I wasn't feeling particularly inspired.
I got a job, and my first job was probably about 17, 16 when I got it. Soon after this period, started working for an ISP. And as I said, there was a lot happening at the time in the country. This, ISP, Computer Frontiers International, run by a gentleman who's still a good friend of mine, Charles Musisi. And he let us do things with computers, learn Linux, just stay after hours and just hack away at things. And we built random, we worked on code projects, but we also built random things of our own. And so that's where I honed, part of where I honed my programming skills. And I've literally worked from the time that I was about 16 through school. I kept the job on the side. I kept the job after work. Through the holidays, I worked at this place and other places as well. And that's where I used that time to experiment, to play around with things, learn a lot of different programming languages, build my first projects, eventually start my first company out of that, which was a electronic voucher distribution company, just riding on the wave of the time in the country that telcos were getting tired of the need to distribute airtime scratch cards. And so they created incentives for businesses, distribution companies, to use electronic means to distribute these vouchers. And so I said, well, why don't we build a system that does that and sell it to those companies? And I want to say, I believe it was the first, if not one of the first, if not the first, EVD system in the country. And just being able to do something and be the first resonated with me. And in a selfish way, it created this sense of, I can do that. I've seen it through, and what else is there that I can do that's not being done? And again, it's you look back and say that these are moments when things happened, but while they're happening, you're just following your internal compass, your intuition, your gut, and what you see around you.
Back then, and now I'm talking early 2000, the choice seems to be between NGO charity work or real kind of business corporate work. I spent with another friend, we spent some time in a refugee camp in Tanzania, I think in 2001. And I really thought, this could be my calling, so much more practical, you can help people directly. But about 6 weeks, 2 months in, I realized it makes you feel better, but it has zero impact beyond the people you see every day. Yeah. And
so
no systemic change. And also gave me a very not so great side of charity. And so I'm glad I did it, but I was clear that this is not the way to really create change on the continent. So I went back to being a consultant, but by then I have decided that I needed to go back to Africa, but I needed to find an angle to go. And, I went through business school, like many people who don't know what to do in life. And then I was lucky enough in those moments, I think the thinking has evolved where you didn't have to choose between do well and do good. And the first really thought leader on this was C.K. Prahalad, the fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. And that was really a turning moment for me. Like reading that article in 2005 just kind of showed me what I had to do in life. Like I had to find businesses that could do that. And being a telecom engineer, having worked in the telecom industry, it was the perfect thing because that's where it was happening. Like we were hearing more about mobile networks and how mobile was changing the face of Africa and doing business in Africa. So I got really excited about that. And that's when I started really kind of looking for work in Africa in sectors that could allow me to do well and do good. And telecom was one of them. And one of those people were MTN, of course. Then there was this article in the Financial Times about MTN banking. Just talking about how MTN has teamed up with Standard Bank to launch this mobile money service where you could use your phone to transfer values across. And for me, that was just like, okay, epiphany moment. The penny dropped. I'm like, of course you can use your phone to transfer value, and this is going to work. And if you go back to, I went back to what I learned from the internet and the .com and how it takes just one idea, and you look 10 years, 15 years later, the world look very different. And I thought the idea of using mobile as a channel for financial services was one of those things for emerging markets, which I know, at least Africa. Then I wrote to MTN. I remember, I was already in kind of discussion with them, but I was comparing them to a few other options, and I guess they were doing the same with me. So, but I was like, okay, no, this is it. I want to do this, and then I flew to South Africa for the first time with my to interview and have further conversation with MTN, and then by December 2005, I had a contract to join MTN Group in South Africa, which I did in January, and that's how I ended up here. I then spent about the following 3 years working for MTN, initially more on general strategy work, but fairly quickly on mobile payments and mobile money. And by December 2008, where I have managed and driven teams in about 15 markets to roll out what is now known as MTN Mobile Money, it became clear to me also that it's just the beginning, and the story was incomplete, and the story could not be told from one perspective. And what MTN has started was going to still be one part of the story. And even Vodafone and M-Pesa was much more known at that point, and Orange, who was also getting into the market, and Airtel, there will be a need to unify somehow all this and build it into a seamless network, the same way we have the GSM network where we don't wander. And I couldn't help thinking about how this could change, finally, the life of migrants that I was describing earlier, to say, well, maybe at the end of all this, you don't have to suffer through sending money home. And all the benefits we got on the communication side, where, by the time I moved to South Africa, I could call every day if I want to, because we could use Skype at that time. And we could, and then WhatsApp came in, and we had BBM at some point. And things got so much better for migrants around the world in terms of how they stay in touch, how they communicate, and so on. But that part of sending money, which every migrant know they have to do, was still archaic. And it's still. So for me, that became the opportunity to say, actually, if you can connect these things together, starting just with Africa, we will be able to make those payments as seamless as we make calls. And maybe, just maybe, we will be able to take this outside of Africa and connect to the rest of the world. And that was the beginning of the MFS Africa journey. And looking back, I can't actually believe that we made that happen. That now, people pick up their phone in New York. My brother lives there now, and that's how he sends money back home. And, you pick up your phone from here in Johannesburg, you can send money to Congo, you can send money to Mozambique, you can buy things from Kenya. And 10 years ago, this was just an idea. And now here we are. Leadership is contextual. Yeah, I know, there are a lot of literature and a lot of things about, these great leaders. I think given the situation, leadership will come out. And it might not be in the same way, it might not be the same people. I always also think that, you have to grow as a company. In general, you have to continue to hire people who are better than you. And you have to surround yourself with people who are better than you. And finally, I think that in a company like ours, or generally in any venture, your job changes regularly. And so my job as a CEO has changed so many times. In this new phase where we're going into, I think it will change again. What it will mean in terms of leadership, I think, first and foremost, is to make sure that people can continue doing their job. Which I think is, my number one job is to make sure that people can do their job. This is going to be a delicate moment. I have been part of mergers myself, acquisition, and I have been consultant advising on merger and acquisition. And I know that a lot of the success actually boils down to individuals and people and what they are willing to do or not do. And it's going to be very important. So in the short term, for me, it will be very much about making sure that the individuals feel that they can still reach their potential in this new combination that we have. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that yet, but I do see that as part of my job as the leader. The other thing is to make sure that we redefine the North Star. Yeah, that because again we're bringing similar dreams, more not exactly the same, together. And I think one of the important elements in a company like ours, at least the old MFS Africa, I will say, is that ability to strive for the North Star that was clearly defined. And every now and then we refresh what it meant to that North Star. And the way we're expressing it at the moment is really about making borders matter less. And that very much resonates with me, with people who has been in MFS Africa for the last 3 years. How do we make sure that the new team that is joining us find themselves into this, or do we have to rethink it a little bit? So that's the second part of my job or leadership in the short term. And in the broader, much longer, like 3 to 5 years, is to make sure that we are moving in the right direction, that we are making the right calls, the right bet. The bigger we become, the more important we become in the lives of many people. And now we're going to be in the lives of SMEs. We know those tend to be more fragile institutions. But so to just make sure that we deliver on this mission responsibly, and we continue to remember why we're doing it and are we doing it right. So continue to guide somehow the team on that path for the next 2-3 years is going to be the third part of my job.
MFS Africa is like your firstborn child, right? So you're watching this child grow up, people are coming in, part of this child's life, etc. And you said something interesting earlier. You said that a lot of what determines whether or not a merger succeeds or an acquisition exceeds is what people are willing or not willing to do. Because you've been very successful, right? You're a leader in this space. You've now, acquired this new company.
I think it depends on how you define success. So for me, all these things are mean to an end. The end is really to see the different world that I've been talking about. I really want to see people picking up their phone and take it for granted they can transact with the rest of the world. I see these things as steps along the way. I really don't think about them as success that one can just fall back on and say that. So what keeps me going is that dream, and I think it is possible. Like, I have had other dreams like being a football player, and I know that's not possible. But this one, I can see it, and I know we have come a long way, and it will be terrible to stop here. And I think now we have a real shot at it. So now I'm fired up. Now I'm like, okay, no, let's go for it, because it has never been closer than where we are now. So, and it's important, and I make sure, that our stakeholders at large understand this, starting with our partners. Why will you want to do business with us? And when you are in the US and you're like a money transfer company, for instance, and you've been doing money transfer into Africa for ages, and here we come and we say, well, now you can send money to a phone. And, 3-4 years ago, we had to explain, what do you mean? The money will go on the phone. What happens if they lose the phone? All this kind of stuff. But we've always been very clear that we are not taking shortcuts. This is not like an adventure for us. This is not, at least for me, this is a mission of my life to make this happen. And we will stay as long as we need to. We're in for the long haul. So with our investors, we talk the same, that this team here, we have put aside and leave easier path that all of us, I think most people, pretty much anyone in MFS Africa could have a great career on their own, and they can work for great organizations, they can start their own businesses, but they chose to put that aside to do this because they believe in it and it's important to us, and therefore we are not going to stop because we raise money, and we are not going to stop because we partner with Beyonic and we get stronger together. We are not going to stop because we make it on the news, because those are just encouragement along the way. The real destination is to see that change in the world. We want people to take for granted that they can transact with anybody in the world, and people of Africa in particular. Until we've done that, it's not success.